Are you looking to take your leadership to the next level, but you find it a little bit of a challenge to explore and to navigate all of the emotions that you may experience in the workplace with your coworkers and with your team members? If so, we're going to take a deep dive today into the realm of emotional intelligence, and mastering emotional intelligence is going to make your leadership so much better, and it's going to help you to build the team of your dreams. Hi, I'm Barika from Simply Unique Coaching, and I have been leading for more than 15 years, and I've led over 18 teams. And as I like to say, I learned how to lead in the trenches. And I'm here today to help you with tips and strategies that are going to help you move forward. I primarily focus on new leaders or leaders who are new to their position, and they're in the midst of transition and trying to get their bearings in where they are now as a leader. And having led so many teams, I've learned in the trenches what works and what doesn't work. And I've learned how to take a dysfunctional team into a high performing team. And in today's video, we're going to focus on emotional intelligence. And this is actually really what I would call the secret sauce. This is the primary thing that I have done that has magnificently changed leadership for me. It turned it on its head. And even though, every team may not be perfect, but this is what will take an imperfect team into becoming a more perfect team. And make sure you stay to the end because I'm going to share with you a strategy that you can use to help you build stronger relationships with your employees. And that's going to be one of the main things that you want to do. So emotional intelligence is basically the ability to know, understand, and be aware of your own emotions as well as being able to control them. But it's also being aware of the emotions of others and being able to assess kind of how others are feeling, whether they are able to communicate that verbally or not. And we're talking about accurately assess. This is not projecting onto people what we think, but this is being able to kind of get a feeling for what people are thinking and feeling, but also knowing ourselves and being very, very, very self-aware. So I'm going to talk about more of the components of what is included in emotional intelligence, but let me first give you like an example. So for a long period of time, I worked in different levels of customer service. So even when I got into leadership, I still had customers or whatnot. So one of the things when you deal with customers is that you are going to have to learn how to master conflict because customers will not always be happy. And then also you need to learn how to navigate them being upset and being able to resolve issues with difficult customers because some people are going to be upset because of circumstances and some are going to be upset just because they just want to be difficult. And you have to deal with all of those. Plus you have your normal customers. But let's go into this example. One of the best things that I have learned when you're dealing with a customer is that you have to kind of let them express what they need to. This is part of the emotional intelligence because if you try to interject what you think or what you already know to be the answer before they have a chance to express themselves, they just tend to get more flustered and then it blows the whole situation up. I worked in call centers before. I worked in retail before. And so in doing that, I have learned how to navigate that. And I want you to be able to navigate that in the workplace because you may encounter that inside of dealing with your employees, inside of dealing with customers, inside of dealing even with your boss. You might have a difficult boss and you want to know how to use your emotional intelligence to help you navigate the situation so that they become better and not worse. And another reason why you want to develop emotional intelligence is because it's going to help people actually like you. And when people like you, it tends to help resolve conflict a little bit easier. It tends to help navigate those difficulties and difficult situations a little bit easier. And it's going to make your job easier. And it's going to make your relationships with your coworkers and your team members much, much easier. So the first part of developing emotional intelligence is being self-aware. And we want to make sure that we recognize our own emotions. We need to know and understand and be able to recognize when we're happy, when we're sad, when we're angry, when we're irritated. We want to be able to recognize all of those things because the likelihood that it's going to impact our decision making is going to be very, very high, especially if we don't recognize those. And we don't want to be people who allow our emotions to drive us all the time because emotions can be temporary. And if you have that temporary moment of frustration or anxiousness or whatever the emotion is that you're feeling, that may not be there long term. And you don't want to make decisions out of that place because they tend to not be the best decisions when we make those. So we want to be able to be aware of that. And we also want to know when we need to be cautious so that we don't go deeper into an emotion that may be one that we don't want to lead us. Also, something we want to keep in mind is that people who can't tend to control their emotions can be seen by others as being unstable or unhinged. And unfortunately, if you have some manipulative people that you work with, they might take advantage of that and they might kind of poke around And you don't want people being able to control you because they know how to get you all riled up in your emotions. I have definitely seen that in the workplace, and you do not want that to be you. You do not want your coworkers or your employees being able to rile you up just because they know how to poke at you and get you into your feels, right? Into your feelings. We also want to have, as a part of that self-awareness, is we want to know what our strengths and our weaknesses are, because when we know those, then we know what we are good at, and then we know those areas where we tend to need to keep an eye on it so that we don't allow ourselves to go spiraling kind of out of control. So we want to have control over that. And then also, even with our weaknesses, we can also help to try to get people on our staff and on our team that can help with those areas that we are weak. But when we're talking about emotions, we need to know what are those triggers that kind of send us off kilter, and we don't want to allow those to lead us. And the next component to emotional intelligence is going to be self-regulation. And we want to ensure that we are regulating our emotions and that our emotions are not running us. That is not what we want. That is not what we want. Okay. So we can do things like maybe take a break, maybe count to 10, maybe have deep breathing. Sometimes if you feel like you want to say something and you want to interject, and you just kind of need to hold your tongue because you feel yourself, that little fire on the inside, beaming up. You can do something like maybe clasp your hands together. You can just, nod and just think and just do some deep breathing. And mindfulness also works. And you want to make sure that you have control of your emotional impulses. You just don't want to let your emotions hold you hostage. Also, we need to have healthy ways to handle and manage stress. So that could be exercise, that could be going for a walk, that could be hanging out with friends, that could be hanging out with family, that could be just going out looking at the stars, taking a walk on the beach. Learn those things that you will need to use and that are helpful to you to help you manage stress, because stress is going to try to come upon us at some point in time, but we need to have a strategy to know how to navigate stress so that it doesn't overtake us and overwhelm us. And we also need to be honest and recognize when we are feeling overwhelmed, and then figure out the strategies that work best for our personality in order to be able to navigate that successfully. And the other thing we want to do is set boundaries. So just because we are aware of other people's emotions does not mean that we are responsible for their emotions. They are responsible for their emotions. We are responsible for ours. And that is kind of the difference in the emotional intelligence, is understanding what we feel, but also being responsible for what we feel and how we express what we feel. That is so important. If you ever watch the show Suits, I think of Lewis Litt versus Harvey. And Harvey was kind of cool, calm, and collected most of the time. And even when he got frustrated, he really most of the time didn't get out of control. But Lewis Litt, oh my gosh, not emotionally intelligent. Not. So if you want to think about that, if you want to see like the perfect examples in work, think of those, Harvey versus Lewis. Okay, so now let's talk about cultivating empathy and understanding the emotions of other people, because when we are in a situation, we want to be able to assess what other people are feeling, right? And we need to be able to do that as leaders because we are responsible for employees. And yes, sometimes, and you may feel like, well, dang, I want them to know how I feel. And yeah, you need to do it. You need to do it professionally when it's necessary, but they don't honestly always need to know how you feel. But if it's something that needs to be addressed, of course, address it. But it's actually going to be more important for you to be in tune with your team, because that's going to help you build better relationships with them. But then also, you can share some things when it's appropriate about your feeling. But I like to say you always vent up or sideways. You don't vent down to your employees. That's just a recipe for like, no, no, no. There are some boundaries you want to have in place. And then you also want to be an empathetic leader, because it's going to make you more human and more tangible. It's not going to make you this leader way out there, out yonder, and it becomes a us versus them mentality. That is a very dangerous place for a team to be in. I've seen it. I've been in workspaces where it was a us versus them, and it was just not a good dynamic. Now, I personally do not do that on my team. I really don't believe in that. But I will say that I have been on teams where the leader was kind of like here, and then the team was like there, and they're totally separate. And how can a team and a company function if the leadership is on one side and the team is on the other side? That's highly dysfunctional, highly dysfunctional. And we don't want to do that. And so we want to make sure that we have that emotional intelligence in place, that we have empathy in place, because then when our employees know that we can understand how they feel, then it makes us, like I said, human. It makes us more relatable and tangible. Like, oh, there's not this super high barrier between me and this person. It's like we have the position, we have the quote unquote rank or whatever. But it doesn't mean that we can't understand where they're coming from. And being able to understand where they're coming from is going to help us build those positive relationships. Whenever we express empathy and we have empathy for our team members, it also helps us to know when we need to adjust our leadership style. So for instance, let's say you have an employee that's coming to work late every day for a week and you know what the rules are and you have to talk to your employee and say, hey, I noticed the past 5 days that you came in late and I'm going to have to document this. Do you want to let me know what's going on? And then they start to tell you about how maybe they've been rushing to take a kid to have medical services in the morning and then having to take the kid to school and then coming to work afterwards. And it's like, then it helps you to understand, okay, we have this policy in place. I have to abide by the policy. However, let me see what I can do to help you out. And then from that point, you can maybe have a conversation with HR to see how you can help support this employee because they're going through a difficult situation. So it's kind of like one of those things where you have to say, how can I help show this employee that I'm there for them when they actually need me? Now, I'm not talking about the employees that just kind of go and just every week they have somebody sick in the hospital and it's just a new person and like their grandmother died like 5 times. Like that's not what we're talking about. You're like, you only have two grandmothers, but you've been to 5 funerals for your two grandmothers. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about legitimate situations and you'll be able to tell in time. And if someone ever violates what you have put out there, the rest of the team members that have been good and that know that you're a good leader, they're going to help support you and they're going to look down on that employee who's not pulling their weight because they know that you're a good leader. So when you're a good leader, your team is going to support you. And also when we're building those positive relationships, it's going to lead to a more positive and collaborative team. I love high performing teams. Those are my favorite types of teams because those are the teams that like to work together and who enjoy working together and who also will enjoy working with you and for you. So that's one of the things that I help focus on is helping leaders build these high performing teams. Developing emotional intelligence also includes having social skills, which I like to term as the interpersonal skills. And when we have good interpersonal skills, people will actually like us and they'll like working with us. And people will work hard for you if they like you. If they don't like you, they might do enough to get by. If they are a high performer in and of themselves, they might do what they need to do to make them feel good, but they might not do it because of you. But if you're a leader who is leading using emotional intelligence, those interpersonal skills are really going to help your team want to help support you and rally around you and help move the mission and the vision of the organization forward. So when it comes to these interpersonal skills and these social skills, I want you to pay attention to how people respond when you speak to them. Do they start to cross their arms? Do they get huffy and puffy? I pay attention to something even as slight as their breathing. Is their breathing elevated or is their breathing cool and calm? I pay attention to those things. I pay attention to like their facial expressions. Do they have like a little nervous tick? Like is that eyebrow kind of like doing like this or the ears turning red? Like pay attention to those things because they're going to help you know what the other person is potentially feeling. The other thing I'm going to say is that we don't want to make assumptions. So we can ask, can you share how you're feeling about this to see if we're on the right page? And if we have the right kind of relationship with our employees, they're going to feel free to share that with us and to express that to us. And here's the last thing I'm going to say about this is that teams that want to work with you are going to always be productive and more effective than the teams that have to work with you. I'll say that one more time. The teams that want to work for you are always going to be more productive and happy and effective than teams that have to work for you. And the final part of emotional intelligence that I want to talk about today is going to be conflict resolution and collaboration. We want to ensure that we are listening to our team members so that we can help address any problems that are occurring. And we want to make sure that we're actively listening so we can get down to the root problem. It's not helpful to deal with the symptoms when we need to get down to the root level of what the issue is. So we want to make sure that we are helping them navigate conflict, that we are navigating conflict successfully with them, and that we address them so that we don't have these long-term conflicts on our teams. And then also we want to have any difficult discussions that we need to have. And when we're having these difficult discussions, we don't want to keep the focus on ourselves. Don't put the focus on you, put the focus on the outcome. What is the desired outcome? And as long as you focus on the desired outcome, and it's kind of a win-win when it can be a win-win, then you're going to get a better result. Now, sometimes you just have to kind of say, this is the decision. It might be a company rule. It might just be a rule that's best for the team. And that might be the decision. But when you know what is it that I need to have happen, then operate from that space. Don't operate from, is this person gonna be mad at me? Or this person needs to do this? And you're like, don't focus like that. Please don't do please don't do that. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. What we want to focus on, what is the outcome? So if you have the employee that's coming in late and they're coming in late just because they are not leaving their house at enough time, what is the outcome of having a conversation with that employee? I need them to come to work on time. And so when I'm having that conversation with that employee, that is the focus is, okay, this is a company policy. We need you to get to work on time. Is there anything I can do to assist you? And then if there's nothing because you want to make sure that there's nothing that you need to do on your side. And then if it's like, okay, with there not being anything to be done on your side as a leader, okay, so what are you prepared to do as an employee to make sure that this does not become a problem again? Because I really don't want to have this conversation with you again. But if we need to have this conversation again, then, the next steps will be X, Y, and Z. So now it's time for our bonus content. And in our bonus today, we're going to talk about sharing strategies that are going to help you become an empathetic listener and an observer. So one of the things that we want to do when we are practicing our empathetic listening is that we want to be present. We don't want to be thinking about what's going to happen in the future. We don't want to be thinking about what do we need to do next, or half listening or listening so that we can respond. We want to be fully present and engaged in what the person is saying so that we can understand where they're coming from. Next, like I said earlier, we want to ensure that we are observing the nonverbal cues, because those nonverbals are going to give us insight into kind of what's happening on the other person's side. Now, again, are they 100% right all of the time? No. But the more you pay attention to people and the more that you pay attention to those people that you're working with, the better you're going to be able to understand, okay, this person's really irritated right now. Oh, they're sad right now. And it might portray itself in a little bit of a different way. Maybe they write with their purple pen when they're happy, and then on a day when they've had some bad news, they're writing in pencil. It could be something just as subtle as that. The next thing is that we want to practice asking open-ended questions. This is a game changer for you as a leader. Make sure you're asking those questions and letting them respond, because that's going to allow them to give you the information that you need, and maybe information that you didn't even know you needed, to help you to become a better leader to that employee. Next, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we want to be flexible, and we want to make sure that we adapt our leadership to whatever the situation is. Like that employee, for example, that was coming into work late because they were taking their child to the hospital or to the doctor or whatever every day. That's not the employee you need to have a huff and puff conversation with. No, you need to be empathetic to that person, because put yourself in their shoes. How would you want somebody to respond to you if you were in their situation? That's how we want to treat people. We want to treat people the way we want to be treated. And I tell you, I believe in sowing good things, because when you put good things out there, it's going to come back to you. And when you put bad out there, it's going to come back to you as well. And we don't want that. We don't want it. And the last thing that you want to make sure that you're doing as a leader is you want to make sure that you can restate to them what you are hearing, to make sure that you're hearing what they're saying, because sometimes we have this little filter in our head. And so when somebody's communicating with us, what we actually hear them saying is not what they're actually trying to communicate. And so we want to ask questions for further clarification. So if today's video helped you out, I would love it if you would give it a thumbs up. That helps the algorithm know, and it helps to push out the videos to more people. And it helps me to get in front of the leaders who want to become better, because that's who I want to help. I want to help leaders who want to become better. And if you have any questions, drop me a comment below. Otherwise, be great. I'm going to drop in at the end a playlist of some leadership videos. So if you want some more videos and more leadership tips, go ahead and check those out. Thanks, guys. Make it a great day. Take care.